What's So Bad About Gasoline? Fossil Fuels and What They Do by Anne Rockwell, illustrated by Paul Meisel. We go to the gas station and fill up the tanks of our cars and we're ready to go. Anywhere, everywhere, in big cars, small cars, all kinds of cars. Gasoline is what makes cars go. What is gasoline anyway? Gasoline is a kind of fuel. When it's burned, it gives engines power. But carbon dioxide, other gases, and small particles of ash go into the atmosphere as the fuel burns. These are called emissions. The engine burns fuel. Gas tank, muffler. Carbon dioxide is a gas that traps heat above the Earth's atmosphere. Too much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere makes the Earth warmer than it should be. We call this global warming. The sun, carbon dioxide released into the atmosphere creates a greenhouse effect. The planet's heat gets trapped. Every year, more and more people all over the world drive cars, and every year the Earth grows warmer. Gasoline is made from petroleum, which is a fossil fuel. Fossils are what remains of plants and animals that lived millions and billions of years ago. Maybe you've seen some in stone. You can't see the ones that make petroleum, for they are too tiny, but they are there. Stone with a leaf fossil, microscopic algae, sand, rock, oil, right there. Long ago, tiny plants and animals lived in oceans that covered much of the earth. When these plants and animals died, they drifted down toward the down to the ocean floor. As millions of years passed, they became covered with sand. As more time passed, the sand turned to rock. The decaying matter from the tiny plants and animals was trapped beneath rock. This trapped decaying matter changed into petroleum. Some of the oceans dried up and left huge petroleum deposits deep underground. Some petroleum remained under the water of the ocean. These deposits under land or sea are where we get petroleum or crude oil to make gasoline. Are they drilling in the desert? Yes, there used to be an ocean there. That's on the water? Yep, it's as big as a city block. You'll see what those pictures mean in a second. People knew about petroleum long ago. There is more in the Middle East than anywhere else in the world. In the sandy deserts of those lands, people sometimes found sand that was moist and oily. Petroleum had seeped up through the ground. They used this oily material to waterproof boats, to preserve mummies, or to rub on their dry skin. They never tried to dig up more because they didn't need to. They didn't use much. Petroleum is still used today to make skin lotions. Bitumen is thickened petroleum that is still used in road paving. Ancient builders used it to strengthen bricks in the mortar that held bricks and stone together. 2,000 years ago, Arabians took baths in petroleum oil and water that they thought strengthened their bodies. The first oil wells were drilled in China during the 4th century. Wells dug with a bamboo pole could reach depths of 800 feet. The distilling process was discovered in the 8th century. Distilling changes a chemical substance into something else. When a liquid chemical substance is heated to the boiling point, a new kind of liquid is given off. This is called a distillate. In the 19th century, people discovered they could make kerosene out of distilled petroleum. Kerosene was a very useful distillate. People lit lamps with it and burned it in stoves to keep warm, but they didn't use much petroleum. Everything changed when the automobile was invented in the late 19th century. Then petroleum became very useful. It could be distilled into gasoline, which made cars go far and fast. It worked better in car engines than kerosene did. Gasoline was cheap, and there seemed to be plenty of the crude oil needed to make it if people dug deep enough in the right places. People began digging and digging deeper and deeper to find deposits of petroleum. They learned how to put floating oil rigs out in the ocean to drill holes and pump it from under the seafloor. As people dug and pumped more and more crude oil, they made more and more gasoline and oil refineries. Refineries are where crude oil is distilled into gasoline. Gasoline became plentiful, making it possible for more and more people to drive their own cars. Not to mention tractors, lawnmowers, motorboats, and other gas-powered vehicles to make life easier or even more fun. Look at all these vehicles that use gasoline. This is swamps from 250 million years ago. Another kind of fossil fuel is coal. Coal is not a liquid fuel like petroleum, but solid like a rock. It is not made from the microscopic plants and animals. Instead, it's made from the plants that once grew in huge swamps that cover the earth. We dig it out of the earth in coal mines and burn it to heat homes and make machines work. Some of these machines make the electricity we use. Some help people make things in factories. But burning coal also puts a lot of carbon dioxide and other emissions into the atmosphere. There is a bad thing about this. Fossil fuels such as gasoline and coal emit more carbon dioxide than any other kind of fuel. They make so much carbon dioxide because they are made of carbon. Carbon is part of every living thing. We are made of carbon. The stove is hot. So are the plants that grow in our yards and the birds and insects that live in them. When you burn carbon, it burns long and hot. But because it is made from living things or organic matter, not all of it burns. Partially burned carbon pollutes the air we breathe. It makes it dirty. And every year, the people of the world burn more fossil fuels. Carbon in me too. Lots of carbon here. There's a factory. Captain, that glacier is much smaller this year. More and more carbon dioxide traps more and more heat above the Earth's atmosphere. Scientists who study the Earth and the environment now think the warmer air makes glaciers and polar ice caps melt. Sea levels rise, shorelines and islands shrink. Many plant and animal species cannot live in the places they always have. The world is changing, and the changes aren't good. Danger, keep out. This house is tilting because the shoreline is going away. The ocean's coming in. Wow, that house has fallen into the ocean. This right here, many animals are endangered by climate change. One day, there won't be any more petroleum. It will be all used up. When it's gone, we won't be able to make any more because it was made by nature billions of years ago. It took a long time for the prehistoric plants and animals that died to turn into coal and petroleum. If people keep using these fuels, a lot more damage will be done to all living things on Earth, for nothing does more damage to the atmosphere than burning fossil fuels. We need to find other ways to get the fuel we need. We have to find ways to use less too, and we need to find these things soon. Fortunately, there are other ways, if we're smart enough to think of them and willing to change our habits. The new hybrid type of car that uses 2 different types of fuel. We can harness and store power from the sun to make machines go. We can use windmills to harness and store power from wind. We can use nuclear energy. We can capture and store energy from waves and tides in the ocean. We can even capture emissions from factory chimneys and recycle them. That way, they don't go up into the atmosphere. We can make other kinds of automobile fuel from corn, wheat, soybeans, or sugarcane, and even water. These fuels do not put as much carbon dioxide into the atmosphere as gasoline does. It's important that we all figure out ways not to depend on fossil fuels, because this planet belongs to all of us. All of us need to take care of it. What ways can you think of to help? Some facts here too, if you want to freeze your screen to look at these 2 pages a little longer. I'm not going to read them, so my video is short enough.